Before digital tools were available, logo designs were hand-drawn, inked at extremely large sizes on hot press illustration board, and reduced down into what are called slick sheets on a stack camera. This process at times would create a nice rounding effect on shapes, specifically corner shapes. Today, digital workflows create absolute precision, and along with that comes shapes that are at times too perfect, too sharp, and thus lack that tactile human quality. In this movie, I want to show you how to use rounding in context of not only shape building, but also how to infuse your logo designs with a little more humanity. Now, in other movies, you've seen me use the Dynamic Corners tool by Astute Graphics, which is right here, and that is the one that I prefer to use on a day-to-day basis as I do all my building, logo, and otherwise. But I want to show you how the corner widget works in Illustrator, because if you don't have that plugin or don't want to get the plugin, I want to show you how to pull it off in Illustrator out of the box. I just happen to have some issues with the functionality as they applied it to Illustrator, and I'll explain that when I show you. In this example right here, we have these two graphic faces. We're going to zoom in on this one right here. And if I do select the direct selection tool, which is the white cursor up here, and I select my artwork with the direct selection tool selected, you can see that these round corner widget controls show up, these round circles with the blue dot in the middle of them. This is how you can control it. Now, to round any anchor point, you just simply grab this controller and you move it. But notice what it does by default. Let's say I want to control the rounding on this first anchor point at the top of the head of this face. It assumes I want to round everything in my design at the same time. And I rarely ever want to do that because I just don't work that way. That's not the way I want to work. So how do you select an anchor point and just round it on its own? Well, you have to click the actual anchor point first. This isolates what anchor point you're rounding. Then you click on the control, and then you can control the round for that anchor point. What this means in Illustrator is you'll have to click every anchor point and manually round it. There is no way to copy attributes of one round to the next anchor point. So it's kind of time intensive because it forces you to go in, and especially you're going to have to zoom in to do this well, to see the controls and to get the aesthetic looks exactly the way you want it to. So it's not impossible. It just takes more time. So we'll keep rounding here. Let's see, we'll select the nose, and let's say I wanted all the shapes in the nose the same round, but I don't want everything else in the face to be rounded. Well, you could do it this way, and then you could control it. Once again, it's all going to be the same round, but if that's what you want, that's how you can isolate a shape within the context of, in this case, this compound path, which has all these various shapes. So you just isolate the anchor point you want, grab the corner widget control, and round it as you see fit. Now, let's say you come back the next day and you want to change it. It's dynamic, so you can come back and you can move it out, but you have to be careful because notice when I move this one out, it assumes I want all of them moved out. So that default on the tool that it assumes anything is why I don't like this tool. I don't like digital tools assuming anything. I'm controlling it. I want to control it the way I want it to work. And to use an analogy, if a construction worker had a smart hammer and he went into work and he assumed every time he picked it up, he wanted to hammer something. That's not the case. He might want to pull a nail out with the other side of the hammer. So I don't like the functionality of this tool. I think there's a better way to handle it, and that's using the plugin from Astute Graphics. Now, I use that, and because I use that, I turn off these abilities in Illustrator, the corner widget, by going to View, going to Hide Corner Widget, going to Illustrator, Preferences, Selection and Anchor Display, and then I set the tolerance to next to 0, 3%. This ensures that this feature is next to never going to show up. So if I select my art on this one, I hit the direct selection tool, you can see none of those corner widget controls are showing up. And That's good because I don't like them because at certain zoom ratios, they get in the way and you accidentally trigger that rounding. And that's why I don't like it. That's why I don't like using it. This is why I use the dynamic corner widget. I just think it's more elegant. It gives you complete control. I can click on the corner widget and it gives me options of controlling how I want it to behave and react, which is also nice as well. So I'll select this, I'll go in, and the nice feature about this is I can immediately start rounding and it assumes nothing. And that's what I like. Let's say around this first one, I want this exact same radius to be applied to this one, then I just click that one and it'll apply it. That's the beauty of this tool. I can go, okay, that works good there. I want to use the same round on the tip of his nose, and I can just click and it applies it. So these rounds are exactly the same radius. This is why this is such a great tool. It's intuitive, it works well, it's simple to use, and like the feature in Illustrator, I can round something really absurdly. Let's say I do that and I go, nah, I don't want that. I can pull it out the next day if I come back to the file and want to adjust it. Now, let's say somebody doesn't have the plugin and you deliver the artwork to them. What are they going to get? They're going to get the raw vector artwork with all the rounds in it. The rounds won't go away. It'll just be embedded into the artwork like a normal vector graphic. So that's good as well. So in context of rounding, how do I use rounding to pull off a better logo design? Well, we're going to do some shape building here again, creating a motif of an eagle. You might have noticed an eagle shows up a few times in this course. It's just, I like birds and I like eagle graphics especially. So that's why I'm kind of gravitating towards it. Most of my examples in this course, by the way, I'd say 90% of them are based off of real world projects I created, and I'm just showing you how I pulled that off. This one is just something I created to demonstrate shape building and the context of using rounds. So we're going to go ahead and unite this shape here. And once this shape is created, I'll clone it, Command-C, Command-F, and I'll select the head that I have going here, and I'll intersect them to form the shape I need. I'm going to select this shape now, and this is going to serve as a throwaway shape because I'm just going to cut out from the initial shape I created to form the same angle as the back of the wings to the front. And then on this, you notice with these two shapes, actually, let's go ahead and deal with the beak part of this bird. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and select the head, and we'll go ahead and remove that to form the head. Now, with the head selected, select all the elements that make up the back of the eagle and his wings. And if I fuse it together, watch what happens where these two shapes overlap, where the paths are sitting on top of one another. It'll add all these anchor points in here. And I actually had a Adobe engineer tell me, well, this is because Illustrator is too precise. I don't know if I completely buy that, in which case I don't want that to happen. So what I usually do is just create a throwaway shape like this. And then with this shape, I select the head shape and I'll just kind of notch it out. Then I'll select two shapes, unite them together, and it resolves that problem. So that's how I deal with that in context of building. We're going to select this shape that's at the same angle of the wings and just lop off this detailing of the negative space of the wings. And with that created, we'll just select that with the body and we'll notch out all that detail. And that's shape building 101. Now with the rounding, where does rounding come in? Well, this is at the point I'll start rounding, and I'll just grab the dynamic corners tool. In this case, I want that round here. This one, I want to have contour continuation with the back. So I want it to swoop nicely into the background. And here, I want to pull it all the way over to this anchor point. So it makes a nice movement from the under the beak and swings up into the back. We'll go ahead and make a round up here, and I'm going to pull it out to about 41 or so. That looks good. And here, you know what? I think this radius is going to work back here, so we'll just click these corners and apply that. That's another reason why I love this tool. It just makes it go that much faster. And on these, we'll pull it out all the way, and once again, apply those here. And the last area will be his beak. And I don't want just too much. That looks about good. And so that's how I'll go about creating this shape. It doesn't take too much more work. in order to clone this, and I'll go ahead and flip it, and it ends up creating the final logo mark you see here. Now, this isn't the only type of rounding I do when I build. Let's take a look at another piece of art. So here's a piece of art. It's part of the iconography that I created for the deduction movie in this course, and we're going to take part of that and use it to create a logo mark for a haberdashery. And so with a stroke, you can work in strokes like this to create the brim of the hat, and I'll just use the rounding just to add the nice round and curl of that brim of the hat. Then I'll go to Object, Path, Outline Path, select his hair. These will be part of the same shape, so I'll unite them together like this. And now it's from this point on, I'll use other subtle rounding in order to improve this design. So I'll take the dynamic corner tool and I'll round the inside here of his hair. Actually, let's try that again. And I just want to apply the same one to that side. So all I'll do on this now is I'll just go through, and I like adding subtle rounds, so not lots. Like those will match. The nice thing about a symmetric design like this is I can figure out the rounding. Like that looks good. Go over here and just click it. Figure out that actually this works for all of them, so that works good. And this one, I want really subtle ones here. And then I'll apply it to there. And that's a little too much. That's good. And I'll apply it there. I'll apply it there. This one, that's good. And I'll apply it there. And then if you ever want to reapply an attribute, you can go up to a previous one you had and select it, and that sets the attribute. Then you can go down and apply it to other ones if you want to keep your continuity going in terms of what rounding you're using on specific aspects of your design, which makes, once again, the process go faster. The nice thing about this is when you have the tool selected, it'll show on the art everywhere you've used that tool. That's another nice feature about this plugin. Now we're going to add type to this, and it works great for any kind of vector shape. So I always use this a lot on customizing type. So I'll go in and I'll customize this one. That looks pretty good. And then I'll just apply it everywhere I want to apply it in terms of the letter forms here. I don't want it on every corner, such as I don't want it on the corner of the E there, but pretty much where it comes to 90-degree angles is what I want to round off, because it's going to just match the aesthetic we have established in our brand icon. So that's how I'll use it to form that. And when it's all said and done, it makes for a very compelling logo design that has that nice attribute of roundness to it, and it works in a lot of different contexts. So if this is a promotional graphic for Gent Haberdashery, you know, the rounding effect just adds, I think, to the overall aesthetic. Now, subtle rounding is where logo design is really great with. So here's exploration it was for a law firm that specializes in law for the horse racing industry of all things. And so this was a thoroughbred graphic I did for one of the iterations that I explored for that company. They went in a completely different direction, but in this case, I used subtle rounding. So we're going to go ahead and turn this one on above it, and I'm going to go ahead and do just some subtle rounding. And when I mean subtle, I mean very subtle. We'll zoom in quite a bit on this one. And this is where all this vector art goes to a very sharp point, and I'm just going to pull these up a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. And once again, once I've applied one, I can just click on the next one to apply it to other ones. And even in areas like this, I'll go ahead and round it like this, do his hoof like this. So I'll go through my entire art and I'll go ahead and round things. Now on this one, if we compare, it's not going to be a huge difference, but there will be a difference if you pay attention. Look at the mane of the horse. So this is with rounding, this without rounding, with, without, with, without. So very subtle, but subtle is the name of the game when it comes to logo design. And the more you pay attention to these details, the better your aesthetic overall is going to be on your logo design. The old school methods of graphic design established this aesthetic, but it wasn't purposeful, really. They were trying to create sharp, clean lines the best they could back then, but due to reproduction limitations, the beautiful side effect was a nice rounding, a happy accident, if you will. Everything I've shown you in this movie can be done with the corner widget tool in Illustrator. You don't need the plugin, but that said, I find the plugin far easier to use.